Hello and welcome to our program. Our guest today is a Nigerian who has been around, who has been in the thick of the action, who has seen so many things happen in our country. My pleasure to welcome Dr. Shettima Mustapha, OFR CON. Well, in the course of this discussion, Dr. Mustapha will be telling us the story of his life. So you're welcome to our program.
Thank you.
When they named you Shettima, has it anything to do with what was happening around that time, maybe because it was the year of the World War and all that?
My name is not Shettima. My name is Mohammed Mustapha. That is what my father decided to call me. In short, Mustapha. But when I was young, because my father was Shettima, so I was called Mustapha Shettima. That was my name. Now, when my father died, and then the Sheikh of Borno decided to give me the title held by my father, which was Shettima, then I became Shettima Mustapha. So instead of saying Shettima Mustapha Shettima, the whole thing was shortened, not deliberately, but, in due course, it became Shettima Mustapha instead of Mustapha Shettima.
Actually, Shettima is a title.
Shettima is the title.
So tell us, about your father, about your mother, about the early life, how you started, probably how you went to school.
Yeah, my father used to work for the then Native Authority. He was the Sheikh whose representative attached to the colonial DOs, and that was how he went to Nguru on an assignment. My father's family, they came from what we describe as Birni, Gazargamo. Those who know the history of Borno Kanum, they know when I say Gazargamo and so on. They descended from there. My mother is from the family of the ulama, the learned, the ulama, the learned people. I had always seen myself as someone pursuing a goal in education. And so initially, I wanted to study medicine, but it wasn't possible. So later on, because I didn't have the privilege of going to the normal secondary school, so at the time I left middle school, I didn't have the equivalent of WASC qualification. So, but at the time when I decided to improve myself educationally, I had wanted to go to the university, but there was no way I could go to the university except if I had the equivalent of an HSC or A levels. Before you got that, you had to have the equivalent of WASC, secondary or GC or level and so on. So I decided on my own to register for. In those days, we used to have what was called the Rapid Results College in London, and there are similar colleges. So I registered with the Rapid Results College, where I studied the required 5 subjects: English, mathematics, physics, chemistry, and so on. And then I got the required 5 subjects, and then by that time I left the work with the Borno Native Authority. I moved and joined the Broadcasting Company of Northern Nigeria. It used to be called Radio Television Kaduna. In those days, TV and radio were all under one authority. So I joined Broadcasting Company, but I was in the sound department. And then eventually, like I said, the single thing that kept driving me was education. Yes. So I decided to go to the university, and I applied to the university, and eventually I got to the university to study what was then called preliminary science.
Okay,
Yes.
We'll continue with the story, but you're telling me about when you were quite young. when you were quite young. What was the driving force? Why was education the single most important thing in your horizon, what you were looking at? I mean, we are talking about those days that education wasn't fashionable, really. You know? Yeah. So why? Why at that young age?
I don't know, maybe I was influenced by my father, who himself, he didn't go to modern school, but I always saw him reciting the Quran with some other people, reading some of the Islamic books and so on. And in any case, I always had this idea that, in those days, monetary, material things were not the thing really. How useful are you to the community and all that stuff. So somehow I have that feeling that if you are educated, only the sky would be your limit. Your contributions to society would be far better if you are educated as a medical doctor, as an agronomist, as an engineer, whatever. Your contribution. And in those days, don't forget, during the colonial days, some of those people who were educated and who went to the university or who went to polytechnics and came back, they were engineers and they were called appointed senior service, and they were having their own cars. When they went on leave home, they drove their cars. Probably in those days, in the whole city, where you can count the number of cars, maybe about 5 or 6 cars owned by people and so on. So these are a whole lot of things that went to influence me to say, look, go for education.
So you went to the university?
Yes, I
Which
did.
university was that?
I went to ABU.
And you started with preliminary?
I started with the preliminary science, and then after preliminary science, I was supposed to, when ABU decided to introduce library science, in fact, I was first recruited to the Institute for Agriculture Research library as a library assistant, with the understanding that the following year, when library science would be introduced to the university, we would go in and study library so that I would come back to the IR to take over from the, for the Oibo, the European woman who was running the library. But you plan this way, God plans something else for you. So eventually I didn't go to the library school, but I went to do, study biological sciences. I studied botany. I got admission to study botany. And so after my degree in botany, then the Institute of Agriculture Research now employed me not as a librarian this time, but as a trainee research fellow, and as a research fellow, and I was attached to the cotton department.
Yeah, we have to pause it a while there because I think the story is getting too fast. Let's go back to the university.
Right.
What was it like? I mean, today in our universities, you talk of some universities today, you don't even have a library. The hostels are not working. So many things are wrong. They say the quality of education is going down. Tell us how it was when you went to the university.
Well, certainly the standard was high. There's no doubt about it whatsoever in those days that the standard was high. And quite a number of our teachers then were foreigners, British, Americans, Indians, and so on and so forth. And the standard was definitely high. Question of you compromise on your study and somehow get a good grade didn't arise. You just have to work for it, and we did work for it because you are given your assignment, you had to finish your assignment. Now, in those days, you came on a scholarship. The money was not big, but at least the money had value. Of course, when I went to the university, I was married. I was with my family, and so
you were already married?
Yes, I was married. In 1967, I was married. So it wasn't a big deal. You are given your scholarship, and somehow you survived. because your total outlook, your ambitions about spending money was not big. You are there for a purpose. You want to study and get your degree and go out. And then you were not studying for certificate. Certainly I wasn't. I didn't go to the university just to obtain a certificate. I went to university to get knowledge. And I don't know whether if you appreciate the difference. What I see nowadays happening is people go to the university to obtain certificates, not necessarily knowledge. That's why we are crying that standard of education is down. And it's truly down because some of the things that a graduate today will produce for you, in those days, probably a good secondary school leaver would have done a better job. So these are the kind of situations that we're in. In those days, your relationship with your teacher was just you're a student, he was a teacher. A question of you are mingling in a club or you are going to stay in his house or whatever, all these things never arose. It's a very clear-cut situation, and the atmosphere for the teaching-learning situation was perfect. You went to the library, whatever book you needed. You know, in those days, we never even dreamt of this thing called internet. Yeah. I think it was much later, after I became a staff of the university, of the IIR university, they introduced what they call micro, what was it now? You know, a whole volume would be photocopied and reduced to like microchips, not the current chips in the computers. It just is like a transparency, okay, which you can slot into this slideshow, and then you read it on the screen. Even that in those days was considered as a progress, because it was a way of reducing a volume of maybe 10 or 20 pages into small slide-like thing, which you can keep, and then you can refer to it. So you went to the library, every book or journal that you required was there.
Did we hear things like cults?
Never. But there were associations and clubs. You know, all these Sigma Delta Alpha Club, all these clubs of boys are there. They did their own thing, but never things like murder or molestation. It never arose. It was purely a social thing. They went about doing their own thing, but they attended their lessons. They attended their classes. No two ways about it. So in those days, definitely our libraries might not be as rich as today, but they were fully equipped to the level that you required for your own degree, whether you are studying masters or bachelors or whatever, the thing is there. And you never went to the library to either steal books or to tear a page of a book because you needed it. You borrow it as usual, you know, it will be lent to you.
It was there for you.
It's there for, exactly, it's there for you. You are given 2 weeks. Go and photocopy if you like. In those days, even photocopy was a luxury, but you can go and copy, hand copying if you like. You return it, you take another one. You are allowed maximum of maybe 2 or 3 books at a time, but the library is there for you.
Were there exam malpractices?
Ooh, I wouldn't say there wasn't, but I have no proof to say there was. Because certainly we passed through the thing, going through the exams as usual, passing it, or if you failed, you either repeat that year. You know, in those days, if you fail certain number of courses, you repeat the whole year. It was only later when this semester system came that, if you had a credit in this one, you carried over. In those days, it was a session that we were following. From October to June, if you fail, God save you. You'll either leave the university or you are to repeat. So that was the system. Therefore, you have to really push yourself to make sure that you pass.
What was discipline like then?
It was high. It was high. Now, discipline, there are many aspects of discipline. First, the institution itself, the university itself, they have their own set of discipline that, you as a student, there are certain expectations, but you as teacher, there are certain expectations below which you cannot fall. Your relationship with your students, it can be anything, but there are certain standards that you could not cross. You as a student, you know your limitations. So all these things are there. But over and above that, most of the people who then came to the university, they went through the normal secondary school, secondary 6, then HSC for 2 years. And, in between, when you finish HSC and before you start your degree course, there was this 9 months. Sometimes some of these boys went back to their home bases and they were given employment as teachers, either in the secondary school or in the middle school or in the primary school and so on. So there was this integration in the system. So those who came to the university in those days, they had their own self-discipline because they went through a normal educational curriculum. And some, like some of us guys who came to the university already mature and married, I mean, you are there for a purpose, so why do you jump around and do things that will tarnish your event? But of course, because you are a student, sometimes you feel you are like a child, so you kind of.
So you got employment, not as a librarian.
No,
yes.
As a researcher.
Okay.
Yeah. But the year we finished the university, in those days, like I said, my own state civil service, then it used to be the Northeast, came to the university and interviewed all of us. Federal government, Federal Government Civil Service Commission went and interviewed us. The NTC then, Nigerian Tobacco Company, went and interviewed us. And then Radio Television Kaduna itself, where I used to work, also was interested in getting me back. So at one point, I had the opportunity to get about 3 or 4 different jobs. And then IR itself, the university itself, was interested in me. So because, like I said, that singular drive, education, I chose to, remain in the university. And of course, having studied botany in my first degree, I just went into in my postgraduate, I just decided to go for agriculture. And God so kind, agriculture just turns out to be where I belong. So today I'm an agriculturist. But that's the way it was.
Yeah, so you said you got married before you went to the university.
I got married very early.
How did you start that business?
No, in those days,
yes.
In those days, when your parents assess you, gauge you, you are coming to maturity. In those days, there are certain societal attitudes and behaviors. And once your parents see that you have come of age and you are kind of, if you are not well looked after, you might go loose here or there, then one of their solutions is to get you married, to begin to teach you responsibility at very early age. So eventually some of my colleagues, some of my friends also were married, and then eventually, by that time my father was dead. I was more or less, under the care of my maternal grandfather, and my mother, and they decided that now it is time to give this boy a wife, so that tame him down before he gets loose. So they decided.
Did you have a choice in it, or was it that kind of? A wife was posted to you like a letter?
No, not necessarily. No, not necessarily, really. Because that girl, well, of course, naturally was recommended to me. But, in those days, it's not you going to the school or going to wherever and identifying a girl and begin to court, begin to move, taking her to clubs and things like that. That was unheard of. It would be your parents or your guardians who would identify a girl for you from a family that they respected. from a respectable family. And then they conduct their own investigation, but the family of the of the potential wife also, they conduct their own research on you to find out whether you really match, whether you are not that kind. You know what I mean? So eventually, it's kind of above your head, negotiations will go on. But you are also given the opportunity to meet the girl, call her, kind of talk to her. Every group, they have their own cultural way of courting potential wives. So you can meet the girl through her sisters or your friends or whatever. And then I had that opportunity, of course. I had the girl, saw the girl, and so on. So eventually I said yes, I consented. So the negotiations continued, and then I married quite young. I was about 20, just about 20 when I married. Not quite, but just about 20. And I had one daughter with the girl, and unfortunately both the mother and the daughter are dead now. But that was it. And then after that, I had a couple of marriages, not quite successful.
Like how many? When you say a couple?
Yeah, a couple. Two, actually. After the first one, I had one that we just stayed for 5 months, no issue. I had another one, the mother of my bigger children now. We stayed for quite some time, 20 plus years. But again, sometimes when this separation comes, when it is time, it's like death, you separate. And then I married the present one, with whom I think this year, what is this year? This is 2001. I think it's about 26 years with my present wife. We have 6 children. The eldest of her children, a boy, is currently reading for a PhD somewhere else in the university. So that's how it has been.
So now that we're talking about your marriage and talking about children, what were you looking at as these children were growing? How did you want to focus them, or how did you focus them? Because today we are talking about parents not having time for their children, children doing what they like and all that. How did you manage with these children? I mean, and in your own case, you're talking about children from different mothers and what have you. How did you manage to keep everybody under the fold and be one family?
Well, I think I have been very lucky, because right from the word go, I say my children cannot just be loose or street children. They have to be useful children. So I struggled to make sure that they got educated, and I had always treated them as friends. As a matter of fact, I cannot remember hitting my children. I mean, they know when I'm angry with them. They do. They don't mess around. When they know that if you do this, Baba will be very angry with you, and that is the borderline. They know. But I never yell at them or hit them. I didn't have to. To teach your children discipline, you didn't have to hit them. You didn't have to abuse them. You didn't have to starve them. Your own countenance, your own attitude, your own reception, your own reaction to what they did is enough to send the note, the signal that, oh, next time Baba will not accept this kind of thing. So that's the way we lived. And despite the fact that some of them are from different mothers, if you see me with them, sometimes you may think they are either my friends or they are either my grandchildren or something. The exchange between me and them is so free. And if they have any difficulty, they will come and say, "What is this, Baba?" And I'll say, if I know, I'll say yes. If I don't, I'll say, "I'm sorry, I don't know." And then that's the way it has been.
Did this style come from your own relationship with your parents? Because you know we didn't talk much about it. Maybe this is the opportunity to talk about it. Did you enjoy this kind of friendship with your parents?
I think yes and no, because the gap between the age gap between myself and my father was a little bit wide. I wouldn't say I had enjoyed that friendly thing, but he was always kind to me. He made sure that nothing went wrong with me, and he, you know, that fatherly supervision thing, without necessarily showing you this, you know, and that maybe that's something that I inherited from him, because I cannot remember. Maybe only a few occasions my father would have been probably was angry with me or something, but I can't remember that harshness as you would see in some families. I didn't go close to him to make him my friend, because like I said, the age gap is wide, so I have my own friends. Go to school, when I come back I have my own friends and so on and so forth, but there was total harmony. It was total harmony.
So what's, I mean, asking you now, what would you say was the biggest thing you took away from your father?
Yeah, discipline, love for honor, standard, and treating people well.
Do you miss him?
Oh, yeah.
What do you miss about him?
Well, he died when I was about 16.
Oh my God.
So, naturally, I missed him, because, like I said, my responsibility went over to my maternal grandfather. So, honestly, I wouldn't say I have known him like my children, for instance, now. They knew me very well. I mean, some of my children are in their 40s. And so they know me for the last 40 years. So they knew me. But if my father left me at the age of 16 or 17, part of which I was in the middle school or I was in the school, so it's difficult to say. But certainly as a father, I missed him.
You know, when you joined the university, that was an entirely new experience.
Certainly it was.
Entirely new experience. So what was your career like from there?
It was a very rewarding career, because, you see, we finished our examination, final examination, on the 12th of June, 1972. And believe me sincerely, on the 19th of June, just a week after, around that time, I was already given a temporary appointment by the Institute for Agricultural Research. And on that very same day, we were 6 a.m. in the morning, we were out on the field planting. That was my baptismal into agriculture. Kind of, we started with planting a seed. Then, of course, within the year, we started learning the nitty-gritties, and of course, being a staff and now in the Agricultural Institute, you know, I try to update myself with the agricultural things. And then a year later, I was sent to the University of Cambridge in England, where I had my postgraduate. And that is where I actually went through proper training in agronomy and plant breeding. And then by the time I came back in 1974, I was more or less trained, or let me say semi-trained agriculturist or agronomist, as you would want to call. And then I was then working with the white men who were there, because the section was run by them. I was the only Nigerian staff. So by 1975, I had taken over the administration of the section. And then I registered for my PhD again. And then by 1977, I went to United States, Purdue University, where I was given the appointment as a visiting scholar, where I did my PhD work and came back. By 1979, I finished my PhD, and I graduated December 1979 as a PhD. And I was the first Nigerian to be trained plant breeder in cotton as at that time. But as fate would have it, that same year, you remember, Nigeria became democratic.
Democracy again.
So my state, Borno State, Governor Mohammed Goni was elected governor under the GNPP, Great Nigeria People's Party, and he appointed me commissioner. Ironically, he put me in finance rather than agriculture. Well, we went there, accepted the job, and then I took a 2-year leave of absence, in the university. And then we went there, and then we entered politics full-fledged. By 1981, ABO wrote to me to say, look, your 2 years has expired. You come back or you resign. And I wrote back and said, the circumstances in which I find myself and the burden we were carrying of the democratic government in those days and the degree of struggle we were struggling against the ruling party, which was the National Party of Nigeria, the NPN then, I said there was no way I could leave my job as commissioner in Borno State. Therefore, I beg of you to,
Extend the leave.
to, what do you call that? Withdrawal of service or something, whatever it was. I said, I didn't resign per se, but I said, but if you can condone, there are certain period when, as an undergraduate, I had to leave the service of the library then, but I say, if you can condone, that will give me about 15 years or whatever period. That will qualify me for gratuity and so on. So the university say, okay, carry on. Take your gratuity and go. But if you want to come back anytime, you are free to come back. So I continued. Again, like I said, you plan this way, God plans that way for you. By 1983, things have gone so much politically that eventually I found myself contesting as the vice president of this country, as a running mate to the great Zik of Africa, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe.
Okay, with the coming together.
With the coming together.
Of GNPP and NPP.
No. You see, the GNPP had a problem. We kind of parted. You remember the PRP in Kano and Kaduna? They parted with Malamine Kano. And then Pamakil Imodu became leader of one group, to which Rimi and Balarabi Musa belonged. And then the GNPP also had problem. We parted. Waziri went this way. And the remnant of them decided to elect me as their leader. And we became the Dr. Shettima Mustapha faction of the GNPP. So the struggle continued until when we approached the 1983 elections, we had nowhere to go. We all sat down and resolved that the Imodu faction of the PRP and Dr. Shettima Mustapha faction of the GNPP resolved to join the NPP. So when we joined the NPP, some of us contested under the NPP, and that was the time when I had the privilege of being the running mate to the Great Zik of Africa. In any case, the GNPP arose from the NPP. You remember, if you go down history lane, you remember that it came out. So to us, it was just like a homecoming. So eventually we contested. Well, they said we didn't win. And so after 1983, December.
Did you win?
I think we did.
Maybe that is history now.
Okay, that's history. You can go and conduct research. But at least what we were told then was that our party didn't win.
Okay.
And we didn't go to court, we didn't challenge it, but we say, okay. But you remember the statement made by Zik. He said, history would vindicate the just. 3 months later, everything went haywire. And then some of us got hurled into prison because we held public office, political office. I spent a whole 12 months in prison just because I was Commissioner for Finance. They thought I stole money. Well, that was the accusation then. Anybody who held public office under the political
was a thief, yes.
So go to prison. But you wouldn't believe it. The day they came to my house in Maiduguri to pick me, to take me to detention, Despite all this in confusion of finance, vice presidential candidate war, despite all the noise we made, all that I had under the sun that day was 100 naira. You wouldn't believe it. I called my wife and I said, look, they're taking me. I don't know when I'm coming back, but don't forget that this is politics. I may or may not even come back. But this is all that I have. I'm leaving you in the hands of God. I did not see my house until after 12 months. How they survive is another, we'll delve into that at another period. Maybe when God wills that I write my something, maybe I'll delve into that. But that was the situation we found ourselves. So 12 months, they turned us upside down. Maybe it's only our pants they didn't remove in the market.
So did they find anything?
Eventually, they had to let us go because they couldn't find anything. They didn't find anything.
No, this is instructive. It is instructive because you're talking about 1983. This is 2011.
Yeah.
Can you say that about any public office holder?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But for sure, me, having gone through that system, I think if I say I do not learn anything from that experience, I think I'm not being honest. So probably my conduct when I was appointed Minister of Agriculture by the same military that suspected me of stealing, I thought I had done my best, and I believe that I didn't touch their money or their property. I believe that I went out of the Ministry of Agriculture with my head above my shoulders. When after I left ministry in 1992, in 2008, what was it, 1992 to 2008, that was 16 years, 16 or 17 years, when the late Aradua called me and said he was going to appoint me minister, he appointed me Minister of Defense. Well, I spent only 7 months in the Ministry of Defense. I moved to Interior, I spent only 8 months, total of 15 months. I still believe that I left with my head well above my shoulders because I believe I didn't do anything. If I did, probably my relationship with my ministry wouldn't be the way it is now. I believe I'm still in very good relationship with the Minister of Defense, with the Minister of Interior, just as I have maintained that with the Minister of Agriculture. So that has been my experience in public office. I have tried to behave well. And that again goes back to what I have learned from my parents.
Honor.
Honor. This life is not judged by money or material things. This life will be judged by honor and integrity.
We'll talk more about your politics. Let's go back to agriculture. I mean, you're an agronomist.
Yeah.
One of the I mean, if we count Nigerians that are in agriculture, I mean, you get on the A list.
Well, I think we have contributed good enough.
What is the problem? When the Grezik, the Okparas, the Ahmadu Bellos, the Awolowos were in power, agriculture built UI. Agriculture built University of Nigeria, Ahmadu Bello and all that. What is why can't we, I mean, we have vast land in Nigeria, not even as much, I mean, much more than you have in other countries. Why can't agriculture lift this country? What is the problem? You've been Minister of Agriculture, you read agriculture, you've been in politics, so you must have an idea why we have this problem.
Let's get this right. It is not agriculture that cannot raise this country. It is you and I that do not put agriculture to raise this country. I don't know if I made my point. Agriculture, for now, 2011, maybe for the next so many years, this country called Nigeria has no option other than agriculture. I'm not saying that don't engage in .com business or in communication or something. Go ahead and do it. But today, people are mentioning that we're 150 million people, isn't it? 2006, when census was conducted, the official figure was 140 million. 2006 to today is only 5 years. Today they are mentioning 150 million.
They're even moving up to 160.
Okay, good, thank you. The rate we are going, this geometric thing we are going at, another 20, 25 years, we may hit the 300 million. We may. Now, who is going to feed you?
So what are you and I doing wrong?
Wait. If you cannot successfully feed your stomach, your animals, your industries today at the rate of 150 million people, when you are up to 300 million, how do you intend to? Do you want Thailand and Burma and India to come and feed you? Now, that is the question. This soil on which we are sitting in Nigeria, it can give you the best crop, it can give you the highest yield, it can give you everything. But you see, agriculture, the soil and agriculture are like infants. You want to treat them well, otherwise your infant will not grow normally. So, are we having the correct attitude towards agriculture in this country? We are not. We are not.
But doctor, you were Minister of Agriculture.
Yes, I was.
And you had the opportunity to take the right decisions.
In those days,
did you take the decisions?
I did.
So what happened?
I don't know. That was 20 years ago. 1990 today is 21 years ago. And when I left the Ministry of Agriculture today, probably 20 other ministers have passed. Let me tell you this. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture came into existence in 1966 or 67 or thereabouts. Now, I became Minister of Agriculture in 1990. That was about 24 years after the ministry came into being. I was the 23rd Minister of Agriculture. After I left in 1992, in the last 18 or 19 years, probably another 20 ministers have come through, food ministers of agriculture and ministers of state. Probably another 20 have come through. On average, in this country, you are having a minister of agriculture per season. So what do you expect?
So they can plan.
What? Tell me. What do you expect in agriculture when your ministers and permanent secretaries spend average of one season? There are, among the ministers of agriculture, there was one that spent only 83 days.
What is the roadmap? What would you suggest?
The roadmap is very simple. First, adopt the right attitude. All these things we are talking on the television, on the radio, on the press, newspapers and so on, are we sincere about it? All this talk about fertilizer, millions of tons, a million tons of fertilizer, oh, this and that, tractors and so on, are we sincere about it? Does the average farmer, the so-called peasant farmer, who actually is the producer of our food in this country, does he get his required fertilizer and other inputs at the time he needs it, at the price he needs it, he can afford? These are the questions. Now, if we are not providing that, then all this talk on the television, all this grammar, all these conferences and so on, will not save this country. I have on several occasions told people that, I'm fed up with conferences. There is nothing new that we would tell Nigerians today, or we will hear from Nigerians today, which we haven't heard in the last 20, 25 years on agriculture.
So we should do
it.
The
question is, go out there and do it. Stop this. You call a conference, big conference in one of these 5-star hotels. You talk about Nigerian poverty. You talk about agricultural production. At the end of the conference, each one of you eats a 5,000 naira plate, sumptuous food. You leave. The poor man, my brother who is in Kondoga or somewhere, he never even smelt that food. And he will remain the same poor man, getting his fertilizer in a mudu. Or 5 farmers will be put together and given 2 or 3 bags of fertilizer. So the question is, let us change our attitude. Government is not the most efficient producer or most efficient worker in agriculture.
We should privatize?
Let government hands off some of these basic things. Fertilizer, seed, fertilizer, chemicals, agrochemicals, out. Government should keep those services, qualities, standard, policies, all these things, funding, tariff, all these things. But for government to buy fertilizer and sell, or buy fertilizer and distribute, what is their business?
Okay, let's talk more of your politics.
Okay.
You knew the grades.
Yeah.
You were running mate to Zig.
Oh, yes. And I'm very proud of it.
Did you learn anything?
Absolutely. If I say I didn't learn anything from this old man, I think I'm not being honest to myself. I have learned everything. One thing that during the campaign, we were on the road for 9 months. We launched the presidential candidate in November 1982 in Jos. That was Zig. And the election, eventually presidential took place in August. So for 9 months, we were on the road. You remember those days we were only 19 states. Day and night for 9 months we were on the road. And of course, as a running mate to the old man, I had to be in his team.
Yes.
We were going around. All the 19 states we had been to. Now, every time, you remember in those days, they would draw a caricature of him with big earrings and, this beards and so on. And of course, some in those days were much younger would say, why are these people abusing you? They are insulting you. Allow us to. He said, take it easy. He said, in Nigeria, you have to have a sense of humor to survive Nigerian politics. He kept telling us this. He never got tired of telling us this. And I tell you, if you don't have a sense of humor, the capability of laughing at your own self in Nigerian politics, you will not survive. So if you see us joining politics in the 50s and in the year 2011 we are still in politics, maybe we have...
You're enjoying the humor. Most people say leadership is the problem of Nigeria. I mean, you may not know it because you don't know who you are, but you're an elder statesman.
I guess.
Yeah, what advice would you give us Nigerians on leadership? Not just Nigerians, the whole of Africa.
Well, okay, let's start from Nigeria. You see, the success of any leader, I think there are two basic components of success in running a system. First, you have to have a good leader, a committed leader, a leader with a foresight, a leader who puts his mind on that target and he wants to lead, not drive. Lead to that target. But equally importantly, he requires purposeful followers who will follow him on the basis that if they see him derailing, they will say, Your Excellency, watch out.
They don't listen.
You see? No. It has to be like magnet, the positive and negative. Otherwise, a leader alone, you can be alone, you can be shouting, you can be doing everything. But if your followers all sit down until you fall, they march, trample you and pass, you can't succeed. So therefore, there must be two components, a purposeful leadership and another purposeful followership. So we have to have those conditions right.
Okay. The Nigeria you want to see, what kind of Nigeria?
A fantastic Nigeria, a wonderful Nigeria. The great Z has a coinage. He says, something is fantastic, something is fabulous. But he said, our own approach was fantabulous. So I want to see a Nigeria that I can beat my chest and go to any part of this country and stand up and say, I'm a Nigerian. I want to be able to relate to someone, not because he's a Muslim or he's a Christian or he's a Fulani or Kanuri or Igbo or Yoruba, but because he's a human being, he's a Nigerian, we share a common goal with him because we are citizens of this country. If this country goes well, it is for us. If this country goes down, it is for us, not for me and not for him.
What legacy would Dr. Shettima Mustapha want to leave? I mean, in 50 years, 100 years, and...
That's a good question.
Yes.
First and foremost, I am giving whatever good training I think I should give to my family, I am doing that. But as far as I'm concerned, it is not only my biological children that are members of my family. I believe that there are quite a lot of people whom I interact with, quite a number of young people who probably are looking up to me as a father figure, as a leader, who expect me to open the way for them. And all this I consider are my, constituency. I have this singular opportunity of following elders. We've just mentioned some of them. Following elders. Now, I believe that I also have this moral and social and political responsibility to bring up the rear. And I hope that when I'm gone, somebody will look at wherever I'm lying or wherever my name comes up to say, oh, here was a good man who did this, that, to uplift his profession, which is agriculture, his society, which is this big thing, his community, and his family. That would be, and I would very much, if down there, if somebody has the power to wake me up to say, Shettima, wake up. If I wake up and see this kind of Nigeria, I'll be too pleased. But unfortunately, you can't wake up from that place.
Well, it's been quite an exciting conversation. But let me ask you, nobody will look at your CV and not say you're a very successful man. What was your guiding principle? What was it that kept you going till today?
Yeah. First, believe in what you are doing. If what you are doing is right and you believe in it, keep doing it. But not just doing it, keep doing it well. And I think that is what I applied in my life to my profession, which is agriculture. When I started, I was kind of fumbling, but I thank God today I can speak on Nigerian agriculture with a reasonable degree of authority. I'm happy with that. Politics, I joined politics in the 50s as a teenager. Today, I'm in this position. I think generally, if you are discussing Nigerian politics in 2011, I believe that somebody will be kind enough to mention my name. So these are the sort of things that I think, that matter. So I have touched, not necessarily the peak, but I think I have touched the 11th floor in my profession, in politics, even in education, and in my relationship with people. I don't have, well, I may have people who may not like my style, but I don't have enemies. I don't think that I can call anybody and say this is my enemy. That's why at the beginning of the program, I said my secret is I'm at peace with myself.
Okay. We've been talking with Dr. Shettima Mustapha, former Minister of Agriculture, former Minister of Defense, former Minister of the Interior, and so many formers, whose journey in life has been guided by the hunger for honor, hunger for education, being at peace with himself, and so many other things. Well, if you learned something, if you enjoyed this conversation, please join us again.